Oleksandra Mazur, thank you so much for finding time to talk to me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your interest in this topic.
Yeah, so the thing I wanted to talk to you about was Olenivka. So what happened there?
It's hard to talk about the history chronological of this mass execution. That was mass execution of prisoners of war in 2022. It was soldiers from Azov who was defending Mariupol before this captivity in Olenivka.
Yeah, so a lot of people have heard of Mariupol, right? So that's a town in eastern Ukraine that was under attack. It's essentially been was destroyed by the Russians at a certain point, right? And the Azov battalion defended it, and then the prisoners of war were taken to a place in Donetsk in eastern Ukraine. Is it still that area still occupied by the Russians?
Yes, now Mariupol is occupied and it is since 2022. And as you said, Azov was a regiment who defend Mariupol, so it was a symbol of defending. So Russians killed them in captivity.
And they did it by igniting some kind of explosive device inside the barracks where they were holding the prisoners of war, and then they tried to blame the Ukrainians, saying that it was a HIMAR, right?
Yes, Russians said that of course, Ukrainian army killed these prisoners of war, but after
Hmm.
investigation, now we know that it was explosion in this barrack. So, and I want to say that there are no international investigation and we don't know why nobody in all the world is not interested in this topic to investigate it. And we, as organization of families of those people who was wanted, who was killed in this mass execution, we prepared all information that we can have with investigators, with OSINT organization, with other organization. We prepared all what we can, and we sent this information to International Criminal Court last year in December. And now we are waiting for international investigation.
Tell me about your organization.
Our organization is Olenivka Community. We are NGO and we are families of those people who was killed and who was wanted in this mass execution, and almost all families of those prisoners of war are in our organization. And there are 160 families in our organization, and we work. We are working like somebody who don't stop share information about this tragedy, about these victims of Russian war crime.
You said over 160 families. So, I mean, they're take the number of victims plus their families and extrapolate how many personal stories there are of people whose lives have been tragically and forever altered by this event. So,
I,
is there, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think that this is a story, personal story for thousands people, because there are families, friends, I don't know, there are a lot of people who was waiting at home for these prisoners of war, but they didn't return because Russians did this war crime.
So would it be correct to say that your organization is partly looking for justice for what happened?
Yes, we are waiting for justice, and we understand that we should ask for this justice all the world, and international organizations, International Criminal Court, because we as a families can't do it by ourselves, and of course Ukraine can't do it by itself. It's only should be at the international level.
Yeah, because you're looking for justice for a war crime. You're not supposed to kill prisoners of war, let alone, you know, kill them in a mass explosion and then try to blame somebody else for it. So why, I know you're not a politician. Why do you think the international community is not investigating this?
I think that this is, of course, a political topic and a political question. And I don't know, because as a human, not a politician, I understand that in the world should be some justice in our civilization. But there are some politicians, political problems, and I think that this is a problem.
Yeah, I mean, one of those problems is that American politicians are now talking about, and the administration is talking about, it's unrealistic to think that Ukraine should not give up territory, right? If there was some sort of negotiated peace. Well, what that follows from that is that if you're giving up territory, part of that territory is a crime scene investigation, right?
Right.
And if you give up that territory to the criminal, then you can expect there will be no investigation.
And of course, it's not about territory, because on this territory there are humans, Ukrainians. So if they will be in occupation, Russians will continue to torture them, to kill them, because they are Ukrainians and because they want to live in Ukraine, in their city, but in their city in Ukraine, not in Russia. And Russia will not accept this. And Russia will not accept Ukrainian language, Ukrainian culture on this territory, language of these people, culture of these people. So it's not about territory only, it's about people, humans.
Yeah, and speaking of, not only language and culture, but they won't tolerate certain people living there, meaning people who want to live free. Or, some of let's talk about some of the victims of this tragedy. So, um, there were, these were prisoners of war, they were soldiers, right? So, is part of what your organization is working to do, um, preserving the stories of some of these individuals? Like, let's talk about some of them. Is there anyone you can point out?
Yes, for example, about those prisoners of war who was killed, on each birthday of each people, we publish a story in English, in Ukrainian and in English, a biography story about this person. So we want to share information about personal, not about a number or only like name of victim. Not no, they were humans. They were people, and we want to share information about their lives, about their some hobbies, activities, about their families, about something what they loved in their lives.
Sort of like a record for the ages that this person existed and who they were. Where do you publish these stories?
We have social medias, maybe all popular social medias we have. Our name is Olenivka Community in English. In Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Blue Sky, almost everything.
Yeah, all the socials.
Yeah,
So Olenivka Community
community, yeah,
in English.
in English. And mostly we translate all our publications in English. So we try our best.
So let's say I wanted to find you. Let's do it real time. Let's say I wanted to find you on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Olenivka Community in English. Is it a page or is it a
Page
profile? Okay.
like this.
Oh, thank you. Olenivka Community. So it's basically just giving people updates about sort of the work you're doing and the information that you're sharing.
But I want to say that there are people who was in this barrack and
Mhm.
they are alive and they are still in Russian captivity and there are no connection with them. So and their families also are in our organization and we try to share also information about these people who are alive, who was wounded and who are still in Russian captivity.
Have there were some prisoners that were already released, is that true?
Yes, and this information which we sent to International Criminal Court, it was with, I should translate this word, with memories from the soldiers who was in barrack and who returned home. So
I see. So there were recordings of the testimony of the prisoners that went through this. They recorded what they had seen, right?
yes.
And that information was passed on to the International Criminal Court. So it was eyewitness accounts of what happened. And some of those, I think I read, basically what the purpose of these eyewitnesses accounts were in order to corroborate the fact that all the evidence points to this being an inside job by the Russians. In other words, a conspiracy to try to make it look like the Ukrainians committed a war crime when in fact the Russians had done so.
Did I correctly understand that what details вказують? Ну, тобто, які деталі вказують на те, що це Росія, так?
Right. Exactly. So the testimony of the people who were released prisoners who had been in Olenivka when this happened, that their testimony was consistent with the notion that this was an inside job by the Russians and not the Ukrainians that sent a HIMAR missile to, into their own.
First of all, before this mass execution, these prisoners of war were in different barracks, and Russians had a list of prisoners of war who should go to this barrack. And during and also I should say that this barrack was at a distance from other barracks, and after this explosion five prisoners of war died because Russian administration of this colony don't accept to give them medical help assistance. So they died because Russians didn't want to accept this medical support.
In other words, there were victims of the explosion who were alive but wounded that could have been saved, and the Russians wouldn't let them get any medical attention.
Yes.
On top of that, there weren't any Russians or Russian personnel injured in this attack, right?
No, nobody from Russia or Russian administration was injured because they prepared to this situation and they protected themselves.
Right. So have you spoken to any of the people that were released from that who lived through it?
Yes, and those people who now in Ukraine and who was in that barrack, they also talked with professionals who collect their testimonies, and it was several groups of organizations, professionals who collect these testimonies, and also there are interviews in Ukrainian media with them. So there are a lot of information, but not in English, mostly in Ukrainian language.
So what did you learn when you spoke to some of the prisoners of war who had been released?
I think that it's something about justice. All of us want to have this justice after this war crime, but it can be only like international justice.
And in terms of personal stories, are there any that you think would be worthwhile sharing, maybe even here?
Yes, we can share these stories.
Yeah, tell
If
me
you
about some of it.
I can I can told in English. I think about my relative because I'm a part of families of prisoners of war who killed in Olenivka, and my relative is one of those who could survive, but Russians didn't accept this medical support. I told you that there are five prisoners of war, and one of them was my relative.
So were there Ukrainian medics in the barracks that could have helped but were not
Uh,
allowed to?
Medicals and also some prisoners of war could give this assistance medical, but Russians didn't accept this.
This organization that you're a part of, when did it form initially?
Our organization is since January 2023 because from January 2023 it was a situation when I should translate on United Nations. I'm sorry. When it was a situation in January 2023 when United Nations stopped their trying to investigate this. So
I see. So that when the international investigation stopped, that's when sort of the grassroots began to pop up and people took it upon themselves to continue telling the story.
yes, and it was like finish. It was like the end of everything about Olenivka in international justice. And we decided to do something by ourselves.
Okay, so were you one of the founding members of the organization?
Yes. And
Okay,
now I'm a head of the organization.
okay. So what does your day-to-day look like? You know, you wake up, you have your coffee, what do you do?
Work, work, work. Every day, all days. I have no weekend because it's not like work with a salary. And I should give to this, to our organization, to this topic a lot of my time, and it's every day, and it's very hard. I should translate by psychology
Yeah,
to.
it's hard psychologically, it's hard emotionally to do it. Is that what you're
Yes,
trying to say?
because I wasn't prepared to this topic. I never have been this. I don't know.
Well, what's your background before the war? What did you do? What was your profession? Were you a student? Did you have a job? Tell me about yourself.
Uh, I'm a linguist, and I I'm working now also as a linguist, as a teacher, tutor of Polish and French languages.
Okay. So this is
And
your fourth or fifth language that we're speaking right now, right?
yes, and at my university, English was my language of my profile in university. Ukrainian, Polish, English, and I'm sorry, Russians, Russian language, because I studied at Slavic studios with English language, Eastern Slavic studios. And I was working in this topic like linguist, but I never wanted to work with something like this, with war crimes, with these war topics, and I wasn't prepared to this.
So how do you even begin? I wonder, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to raise awareness about an international tragedy. So are you trying to talk to politicians? What does your advocacy look like?
In Ukraine, we always have a contact to our government, to some structures, but they can do nothing, almost nothing in this situation, because, like I said, that it's something on the international level. And I was in United Nations in Geneva, and also in this building of ICRC, I spoke with people who work in United Nations and ICRC, and we have. I'm sorry, I should translate. We have a speech in the building of United Nations, but there are no changes in this situation. So we
Yeah, so
always do
so think
something.
about, I'm sorry, yeah, so think about the consequences of sort of what's going on now, right? So we have an American administration that's come in, and if I'm going to be kind to them, they're at least ambiguous about whether they even support Ukraine at this point, right? And if we're talking about what the consequences are of capitulating to Russian aggression. One of them is that we can basically say we're throwing out international norms. And so, in essence, you're inviting anybody who's a tin pot dictator out there who thinks they have a grievance they want to settle with anybody else to say, look, remember how the United States had all these values and we were talking about human rights and justice and all that? You can throw that out the window. And then what is the consequence? So we're talking about sort of an international order that's built on chaos. And does that, and I'm sort of talking to the American audience now, does that make us safer? Does that make us safer even here in the United States, to think that if something like this can happen, where a criminal dictatorship kills prisoners of war, people who can't fight back, and then tries to create a story where they blame someone else, and then there's nothing that happens, no consequences whatsoever. What does that mean for the future of the world? What kind of world are we living in?
Yes, and we try not to stop our working. We will not stop share this information abroad, and but I don't know about the future because it's a topic about politics, and I don't know.
And I mean, this shouldn't be a political question, right? It should be one of, hey, these are the rules we all agreed on, and let's follow those rules. So the Ukrainian government, are they are they working with you in any way? Are you getting any support from the Ukrainian government?
We cooperate with them, but as I said, we are interested in something abroad because we have support in our country from people, but Ukrainians know about Olenivka, and our government know about Ukrainian Olenivka. So, and we shouldn't approve that this is a war crime, that we are families, and it's true because we know in
So
our
when
country.
so so when you say you want something international, meaning you want some kind of action by either an international body or a foreign government on this, is that what you're talking about?
Mm, maybe first of all some publications about people who was in that barrack. I don't know, in international in media abroad, their personal stories. I don't know, because it's a lack of information. Information like not about numbers, but about people.
What do you think that would accomplish? What do you think that would bring? In other words, why do you want to share the personal stories of the people who were victims of this tragedy?
Because when we say that Russia kill Ukrainians, it's not about, like I said, it's not about numbers, that some number of Ukrainians was killed. Not. It's about personal stories, and Russians uh, ends these lives, these personal stories, and we want to. I'm sorry, I should translate this sentence
Okay. You
because
can
it's.
always say something in Ukrainian and I'll translate it real time if you want.
Тобто росіяни вбивають цих людей і вони закінчують їхню життєву історію. А ми, поширюючи їхню інформацію, їхню біографію, намагаємося продовжити життя їхнє хоча б в пам'яті людей.
So the Russians killed this person and ended their lives. And what you want to do is continue that person's life or their legacy by sharing their story so that in some way they continue to live.
Yes, and not only in Ukraine, not only in a small group, but we try to share it everywhere.
And what's your hope that this will, what do you think this would accomplish?
I think that For example, it's if Olenivka will be in world history, like Auschwitz.
I see. Yeah, I guess the implications of that are when someone thinks of something like what happened at Auschwitz, immediately you hear that word and it triggers an idea that you know exactly, okay, what we're talking about here is something horrible that happened that we never want to happen again.
And
And then that,
Olenivka should be like this, yes. Now it means something horrible.
right, that's heavy. I mean, as you say that out loud, it's even hard for me to process, because you grow up sort of in a world we've all grown up in this world, one that was created after World War II, sort of thinking that things are settled or things are a certain way, and now turn that over on its head, and we're back at the point in the evolution of human history where we have to tell people that, hey, this thing that's happening is wrong and it shouldn't be happening, and it falls upon regular people to say to have to tell these stories again, and it's mind blowing. I don't even have the words to describe it. I don't know how you are able. You said you started this in January of 2023, so we're a little over 2 years in to this project, and basically every day you're sharing information about this. I mean, this must weigh on you. I mean, you said you had no breaks. How
Yes,
do how do
that's
you
true.
cope? How do you cope with it? Well, what keeps you going?
But my mental health is okay.
Yeah.
I should say,
Do you think it
because
would be worse if you weren't doing this?
um, I think that I have this idea about Olenivka like Auschwitz in world history, and I think about this, not about the problems on this way.
I see. So you're focused on your work and everything else is just put to the side, basically.
Yes, I'm focused on success of our organization, and also I support Ukrainian army. I'm doing fundraising for Ukrainian army, not like NGO, but me personally. So I try everything what I can to support Ukraine in this war, to protect my home.
So if American support ends, is that going to change what you do?
Якщо Америка припинить допомагати,
Right. Is that going
uh,
to change anything for you?
for me, I don't know. Maybe the situation will be more hardest. But I think that I will never stop working when I will be alive.
Do you think it's possible to negotiate a peace deal with the Russians?
I think that that first of all we should focus on Russian economy because they have money to provide this war. So negotiation it's not a main thing in this topic. The main thing is the money.
Well,
So
I guess what my question is, do you think you can trust the Russian regime to make a
no,
deal and then stick to it? Because we're
uh,
talking about people that did a war crime and then tried to blame someone else for it.
I think that Russia do everything what they can, and like about money, they have money, so they do war crimes and negotiation. It's not a good way because they have the power to do what they want, not something after negotiations. not something до чого їх схилили.
Oh, meaning that they don't have any desire or incentive to
Yeah.
negotiate. So this is one thing that I've noticed that maybe some people don't understand about this war, is that if the Russians stopped right now, they stopped fighting, do you think the war would be over?
But there are occupied territory by Russians occupied, and there are people, Ukrainians, on
Hmm.
that territory. So the killing of these civilians people, killing of tortures of these civilian peoples will continue. So it's not the good end of this war.
I see. So if for example the borders were to be drawn based on the occupied territories, meaning wherever the armies control whatever land, that's supposing we decided, okay, that's how we're going to go forward. You would expect that anybody who opposed the Russian regime, spoke Ukrainian, tried to um, express Ukrainian culture. What do you think? You're saying that the consequences for those people would be torture or death?
Yes, because there are a lot of histories like this. And you know, not only some people in occupation who, for example, support Ukraine, Ukrainian language, but also all active people, like in the Soviet Union. Some businessmen, people who have money, all of them will be in torturing and killed because they are active and they have something in their lives.
That's an interesting difference between the two countries that you sort of bring up, because this is where it sort of begs the question for me. It's that what are the consequences of speaking Ukrainian in Russian occupied territory or in the Russian Federation? Is you can expect some kind of negative consequences one way or the other. And then in Ukraine, if you speak Russian, people just talk to you. I mean, meaning like it's just a normal thing, like there, one of the, I guess, false justifications, right, that for the war was that people who spoke Russian or people who were Russian were being somehow mistreated in Ukraine. But the reality is the opposite, right? That's sort of the tactic of the Russian regime, is to say, let's blame the other guy for doing what we do. In other words, if you were to just walk down the street in Moscow and start talking in Ukrainian to somebody, you can expect the consequences of that to be negative. Whereas if you're walking down the street, let's say in Kyiv, and you're speaking in Russian, you can expect the consequences of that to be you just live your life.
Yes, in Ukraine there are no problem with language or nation or culture of somebody, but in Russia, you can be only Russian with Russian language.
That's interesting. So I'm an American, right? My background is Ukrainian, but I consider myself an American, right? So Ukraine is different from America in that it's got it's an ethno state in that it has a culture based on a language and a people and a group, right? But
Mhm.
what this is sort of off topic, but I'm interested in this as well. What would you
Mhm.
consider to be the thing that makes somebody Ukrainian? Like, how is it that what makes somebody a Ukrainian person? Is it the place they were born? Is it the language? Is it their genetics? What is it?
I think also it's вибір,
Choice.
choice, yes, because
So choose to be Ukrainian and you're Ukrainian.
Uh, yes, but if there are a reason, for example, somebody moved to Ukraine
Hmm.
and they want to assimilate, they want to be Ukrainians, and they do something to be Ukrainians. So they are Ukrainians if they want to be Ukrainians. And also somebody who protect now Ukraine, if they want to be Ukrainians, I think that they can be. And mostly it's a choice, and of course all of us have a different roots in our families. So our parents, grandparents can be from different nations, but if we want make this choice, we can choose one nation.
It's strange because um, I'm being sarcastic now. I don't want this to be lost in translation. You sound like the opposite of a Nazi when you say that anyone from any background can be accepted as Ukrainian as long as they want to be Ukrainian.
Because it's a history of human. There was always some migration, some groups, and something like nation. It's a word from 19th century. Yes, that 19th century people. Ну, люди зрозуміли, understood that there are some nations maybe, like all people.
Oh, you mean
But
that the idea of a nation is not very
yeah,
old? It's only, yeah, from the 19th century. Okay.
but it was always some humans and some groups, but it always mixed, yes.
Yes.
And in Ukrainian there are a lot of ethnical groups, and these groups mixed all the time. So if anybody want to be Ukrainian, he or she can.
Yeah, I was just talking about this yesterday with some friends of mine. We were in Chicago. We have a married couple. The husband is from India
Mm-hmm.
originally. The wife is from Ukraine, but she's got Moldovan roots. And so, in one from one aspect, you could say somebody might say, "Well, are either of them Ukrainian?" But they both identify as Ukrainian because one grew up in Ukraine speaking Russian with Moldovan heritage, considers themselves Ukrainian, now speaks Ukrainian, and is
Mm-hmm.
married to someone from India who didn't live in Ukraine, but now sort of adopts the culture and the ideas and the sort of the, I guess the culture is this striving for freedom or wanting to live in a just world. And that's all
Mm-hmm.
it takes to be Ukrainian. It doesn't matter what your skin color is or what your ethnic background is.
Mm-hmm. And I have the same example because my friend's parents are from India, and he was born in Ukraine, and he worked in our topic Olenivka. In another organization, Yahad in Unum. It's a French organization who investigated German Nazi crimes due Second World War. So, and this organization support us and investigate with us about Olenivka. And this man, my friend, worked in this organization, and now he will work in Ukrainian government, and his roots are from India, but he also is a Ukrainian person.
So if you had the opportunity to tell the American people what what you want them to know about your work, what would you say?
I will say that we are normal people, like everybody, like you, who will listen this podcast, and we want to be alive, and that's all. And we want to live in our country without war, like normal lives. with our family, our hobbies, travels, work. I don't know. We are like you, and one thing what we want to be alive.
Oleksandra Mazur, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I actually want to spend a bit more time on this topic as I go forward. So I'm going to be publishing some more information. I'm going to be following your social media posts. And so if there's anything interesting or things that come up that you want me to know about, I definitely want to hear about it. And I
And
hope to be able to check in with you in the future where the International Criminal Court has actually prosecuted somebody for these things. And I'm going to keep following that until that happens. So I really appreciate your time and you telling us a little bit about what you're doing.
thank you.